Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Solutions for the Soul podcast. My name is Parker Tompkins. I am the clinical director and psychotherapist at Soul Solutions. Got a few other ladies with me.
Tanisha Rivers, also a psychotherapist at Soul Solutions.
And I'm Cherish Fields. I am the Chief Operations Officer as well as psychotherapist.
Yes, happy to have y'all in. If y'all tuned in to our last episode of the podcast, we did kind of a part one to a series that we are working towards on just relationships' impact on mental health. I think, as we might have discussed, it's a very trendy topic around relationships and things, but our goal is to bring in a little bit more of the clinical side and just how therapy can influence your ability to make healthy decisions in your relationships, engage in healthy relationships. So today we wanted to get into that a little bit deeper. One of the goals of this episode today is to really kind of talk about the root, right? Because we get into these relationships and we have these patterns or maybe see these cycles or behaviors. And as we've mentioned before, everything comes from somewhere, right? All behavior has meaning. And so, as it pertains to our romantic relationship specifically, just kind of touching on where some of these things come from and how we can have a little more control over the narrative and what we want things to look like.
Absolutely.
Yes. So I don't want to get started thinking of the root of relationships. And when I think of the root, the first thing I think of is family of origin, right? Where we came from, what the dynamics looked like in our household or households growing up, whether that was with parents or other caretakers. We get so much of our really identity through that in general, whether it's values, attachment styles, how we communicate. A lot of it comes from that family of origin, and we take it straight from the family right into a relationship usually. So, what kind of initial thoughts do y'all have about just the connection there between our kind of earlier life experiences and romantic relationships?
Yeah, with parenting and the way that you show up and present as a parent, it makes all the difference. If there's really like that emotional component um, that goes into it. So, like, if you are not very emotionally aware or emotionally dismissive, it creates um, it creates something different with the kids. So now they might feel like they're not safe to express emotions or to say, "Hey, this is how I feel," or "This made me feel this way," or "I'm hurt by that." They don't really have the language for it. And there's a bunch of different ideas that get adopted as far as being able to handle things on your own versus being able to trust your caregivers with that emotional piece. Um, and it changes your like attachment styles, which we'll get into that in a little bit. But um, emotional maturity, I guess we can say, it plays a big role in how your child perceives themselves and how they perceive the world and who they can trust.
Yeah,
That's one thing.
absolutely.
Yeah, I would say, the way you're raised is your first model. It's your example. I think that um that's how, your subconscious is really developed by your early experiences of what's there. I always say I think it's our job when you become an adult to look at that though, to evaluate, well, what has been my experiences and are these experiences the root of these experiences are these things that I still want to, be connected to, right? Do I want them to reflect the same things or do I want to kind of like a root grow in a different direction, to help grow the family, the lineage, all that good stuff. So, yeah, I think it's really important to, as adults, to really look at that and be able to understand it. And I think there's a difference, with going back and saying, yep, I know that, my how I'm in relationships and what I know about relationships come from family. But I think it's also a thing of like making sure that you're not making an excuse as well as just like, well, I'm like this because, right? And I think that's a line too that we cross or we see in relationships where it's like, well, I'm like this, or I am my daddy in my life, or I am a mom in my life, or whatever the case may be. This is all I know, which is also a red flag. your
Because
relationship.
all that, yes, was your experience, it's still your responsibility to manage that and learn more about that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We're gonna get into that a little bit in today's episode too, like some of the patterns that we find ourselves in and what to do about it for sure. But I agree fully. And as a kid, you learn everything through observation. Literally everything. How to eat, how to walk, how to talk. It is paying attention to the examples that are around you. And then one day, I'm like, all right, well, we've watched and observed a lot of things, and now I'm gonna take it into my own life. And yeah, I think that happens a lot without that kind of evaluation that you mentioned of like really sitting and examining, is this what's important to me? Is this what I want to carry out now into my adulthood as that identity shapes itself? So yeah, we'll explore a little more. Tanisha, you mentioned attachment styles earlier, and I think it's something that's thrown around a lot, like attachment styles, and I don't know if there's always a cohesive understanding of like what that really means or looks like. Is that something you could shed a little light onto us?
Absolutely. So I want to say first that attachment styles are not like a diagnosis. I don't want anybody to get that conflicted with anything else. It's more of how you adapt it in relationships, whether it's your caregiver relationships, whether it's like personal relationships, romantic relationships. They're not always set in stone. Um, it can change over time. So you might start off as maybe you had a secure attachment as a kid, but once you got into some pretty tumultuous relationships, maybe that changed into something that was like fearful or fearful avoidant. And I want to go into some of those too, but it shows up because of the way that you are trying to adapt. It's almost like how you're surviving in your relationship. Is it a healthy survival thing? Are we doing this together, or is it a push pull? So there are four that we like to focus on. You have your secure attachments. This is not like an absence of conflict. It's not that, but it is more so of a healthy balance of being able to communicate with each other, um, feeling safe emotionally, that kind of thing. You have your anxious attachments. This is kind of like you're more on the edge, like, is it me? Am I doing something wrong? Is this person going to leave me? I need constant reassurance. Um, Disorganized or fearful avoidant is more so like, I kind of want you to be a little close, but not too close. I don't know that doesn't feel safe.
Yeah.
So you might be pushing people away. It's like that push and pull. I want it, but I don't want too much of it. And then you have your avoidance, who are the ones who need more space. They might be a little more dismissive about things. They might have learned that love and relationships are just not safe. And so they're just like, nah, like I'm cool.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And it's usually a means of, to some degree, like a means of control that a person is trying to gain over any situation. Like if I'm somebody that has a little bit of that disorganized kind of push pull, that you realize like I am somebody who doesn't want anything to feel like it's too much for me or more than enough. So if I can control kind of the cadence and the pace of things, even if it's inconsistent and all up and down, then that makes me feel better. And
Yeah.
same even with anxious, I would feel like that constant need for reassurance and kind of questioning everything is because your brain wants to know for sure and have that solid. And a lot of that comes from family and from just the way the environment and the circumstances with which we were brought up.
Yeah, absolutely. I had learned myself that I was in that fearful avoidance. And I didn't realize it until somebody did something and I started checking my phone and waiting for them to respond. And I'm like, wait, what is
Yeah.
that? Um, and it's also nothing to be ashamed of, too. I want to point that out because this is the way that you learned relationships. You learned how to love from home. You learn how to see people from home. It's your whole worldview is shaped between your child and teen years.
Yeah. So
So
if you didn't have much of a home, that
exactly.
also shapes everything, that creates a lot of instability. And I think that frequently leads to a need for reassurance because I'm not used to being solid. I'm not used to being stable. And so anything that maybe something stable and comfortable starts to feel like scary because I'm not used to that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Getting comfortable with the chaos. When I tell people that and have to explain that part, it's like you're comfortable with it because you know what to expect from the chaos. You know that, okay, this person might not like this, or maybe we're going to argue about this later, but we'll get back. And that's the pattern that you're comfortable with. And that's not healthy at all, really, but it feels like it because it's comfortable. It's something that you're aware of and you know what to expect from.
Yeah,
So people tend to stay in things that they probably shouldn't be staying in.
definitely. Definitely. I also feel like it goes into communication and just how things are or are not resolved in any type of family unit or just home origin dynamic where if you're used to hostility or accusatory statements or always kind of pointing the finger at somebody else, if that's what you experienced, then that's what you're likely to bring into a relationship. And that's also what you're likely to tolerate in a relationship,
Mhm.
I feel like, which is pretty significant. Yeah.
Yeah. I've had clients talk about abuse, and even if, let's just say that their father was pretty strict and really stern, if it wasn't physical abuse, it could have been some emotional abuse there. And while it didn't look the same with their partners, they still accept it's a form of abuse. And in their mind, it's like, well, it's not this or it's not that. And so they just kind of will accept it as it is, even though it's still abuse. Abuse is abuse.
Mm-hmm.
Verbal abuse, emotional abuse, it's abuse.
Yeah.
Um, I don't think people like that word either because it seems like such a
Abuse.
harsh one. Yeah,
It's harsh because it is.
it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not things to take lightly. I agree.
You gotta call a spade when you see it, and even ask yourself, like, what is your idea of love? What does that even mean to you?
Mm-hmm.
Because with the relationships that you see at home, you might think that yelling, cussing, and fussing and making up later all the time is the way to love, or not talking to each other at all is the way to love. And how you were saying earlier, just seeing if that's something that sits well with you and that you actually agree with, and exploring that and understanding where that came from. That's important too if we're going to figure out how we're going to heal from our past experiences.
Mm-hmm.
I think that as I was as I was listening, it made me think about too, if you're enduring all of this, sometimes it's good to ask yourself or step back. 'Cause I think a lot of people struggle with looking outward of the other person and, will you do this to me? And like you said, well, this is how I saw my family and things of that nature. But really, and people don't like this, but that self accountability. Um, so not just looking at yourself as, um, hey, this is where I came from, but then also looking at it from a space of why am I allowing this? Why am I continuing to participate?
Yes.
I think that's important. A lot of times you don't see that, when people are really and it's not about blame. And I think that's important to say. It's not about blame. It is about seeing things for the way they are and being able to take accountability to empower yourself to actually see that you have power to make the decision and have a choice, right? Like you don't have to sit in something or be the victim of something or tolerate certain things that don't feel good. Because I know that there are a lot of whether it's institutions, society, marketing, all kinds of things that we see on a daily of like love looks like this. Like you said, like, you know, you have these seasons where you grow and you go through it. That doesn't mean that you gotta endure abuse, you know what I'm saying, or endure things that um aren't aren't adding value to you. You know what I'm saying? So I think that if you're in a relationship or you're looking at your relationships as a whole, I think that is a part of it too. And even when you said the attachment stuff earlier, I was thinking about like having, do you have exploring your mindset? Do I have a mindset that actually wants to evaluate myself versus do I go to therapy so that I can get validated that it ain't me?
Right.
Still,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So think about how you're looking at stuff because it's easy to point the finger, blame the mom, blame the dad, blame family, blame your examples or the lack thereof. But I think the harder work is to ask yourself, what kind of mindset do I have? do I sit back and actually evaluate my own thinking and mindset, and do I want to grow? Do I like this? You know?
Yeah.
Um, do I not like it? And if I don't like it, then what decisions do I need to make? What choices do I have, and what do I need to do for myself? And that doesn't mean that it's comfortable.
Mm-mm.
That don't mean it's gonna be comfortable.
Yeah,
But I do think that it's important to know that you have power of choice.
Mhm.
definitely. I agree. And it makes me think too what you said, like we get so many opinions and ideas from our family as well that really does kind of shape our core beliefs and what we believe to be true and how things are supposed to be and ideas about loyalty and relationships in general. For example, I think a lot of people struggle with the pressure that like you need to be in a relationship, just period.
Yes.
Like, cause your auntie asking at Thanksgiving again, why you single?
Mhm.
Or cause your mom talking about grandbabies again. And it's like we get these ideas that a relationship adds value and it's a choice. What if you
Right.
don't? What if you literally don't want to be in one? Like you just might not want to.
Right.
And I think that a lot of times that's just frowned upon in a way that is damaging because it limits the perception of the power of choice. Where in reality, I want to empower people in life and the clients that I work with that there are times and seasons in life that maybe a relationship doesn't have to be the priority and isn't aligned with the other things that you're trying to work on. If it is, great. And if you can have your own personal development within the relationship, that's awesome. But I think we get into this pressure that if I'm not in one, I'm not okay. And a lot of that comes from core beliefs. I think even religion we kind of chatted about can get into that when it comes from the family of origin. But yeah, how do we kind of help people in recognizing that how it was told to you forever is not how it has to be ongoing?
I like to ask the question either two ways. I'll either ask, what does your relationship say about you? Or what story has your relationship said to you, to kind of get down to some of those core beliefs? Because a lot of times when, let's just say, auntie's asking it at dinner, right? Now your core beliefs are screaming at you because it's been triggered. And it's like, okay, am I not worthy of love? Am I not desirable? Like, why are they pressuring me? Like, because if you don't have this outcome that has been pushed on you, what is that saying about you? Is it saying you're not good enough? And then we also have to understand where those came from, which is typically a family dynamic or your childhood experiences, teen experiences.
Yeah.
But they start screaming on a bullhorn when it's triggered by something like that.
Yeah.
Especially if you're in a relationship and it goes wrong and now it's not meeting up to expectations. Maybe everybody's wanting to get married, wanting you to get married and have kids and all these things. You're with this person, didn't really look at the alignment of things. It was more so checking off boxes, and which I've been guilty of that too, checking off boxes, right? And the person's just not aligned. It's not, and that's okay. Realizing that that's okay. And uh, what another thing I like to do is saying we're going to take some of these blocks and give them back to where they belong to. That core belief is a block. It's a rock. We're going to take that boulder and kick it down.
Yeah.
Who said that? Your mama said that? Give it back to your mama. Uh-huh.
He did.
Your daddy said you weren't good enough. Give it back to your daddy.
Yeah.
Let's do that because now your behavior is based off of the beliefs that you have about yourself versus and they're more than likely not true versus uh going off of your values.
Yeah. Definitely. I agree for sure. And I feel like that's kind of leads us into just looking at your own contribution, right? Cherish, you mentioned a few minutes ago, like there's a lot of what they did and what they did and what they did, and tell me that they're wrong and I'm right. And sometimes they might be wrong. And sometimes you might be right too. Yeah, for sure. And so when we think about looking at the patterns that we're in from a relationship perspective. Like, am I finding myself in similar relationships? Am I finding myself tolerating similar behaviors? How how first as therapists can we help like bring awareness to that first? Because I think a lot of deflection happens and accountability is big and it's important because understanding yourself and your own kind of what you bring into the dynamic is I think the first step or a big step in identifying if it's a healthy dynamic or if it's something that you want to be a part of. So how can we explore that?
I think the first thing, I know what I try to do myself, and I also, depending on the client, try to work with them on is understanding, having them observe their experiences. So like going back and say, let's give me two experiences. And let's talk through them. What happened in that experience? And okay, how did you react to that? How did that feel? So we're engaging your whole self and kind of being able to pinpoint what was going on in that and how did you react? What did you do? Okay, cool. A lot of times when you get to ask those questions and they have to walk through, people can recognize, oh, yeah, I did that. Okay, now let's walk through this other one. Oh, same thing. Okay. So what is that? That's me. That's my pattern. Oh, okay. All right. So now that you know this is your pattern, what do you think about that? Does that how does is that I go back to reflection. Is that a reflection of what you want? Right? Because I think that there's that difference of who I think I'm showing up as and who I'm actually showing up as. And I always help clients to understand that there's a gap. And there's always a gap, right? So it's like being able to really look at that, and being able to step back and say, let me observe myself. And if you have a hard time looking at yourself, then we can always look at like I love to use relationships, you know what I'm saying, and people's relationships, whether that's a parent, a significant other, or whoever, because the relationships is a reflection. So it's always, if you don't want to look at yourself, then I can use the relationship to help reflect it back to you so that you're able to kind of see if in a number of relationships you keep experiencing the same stuff, then yeah, it could be them, but it could also be you too, right? So I think when it comes to patterns, is being able to, like I said, identify if something is reoccurring. And if it is reoccurring, kind of noticing what you see in yourself and how you show up in those things.
And I feel like it's not about being a perfect person either. It's not like the goal is not to get to the point where it's not me and I'm always right and somebody's wrong. I think more so the goal is to not get stuck in loops that are already identified as unsatisfactory. I feel like I've worked with a lot of clients who maybe experience that feeling stuck in a loop, and it feels so natural that it's like, okay, I did this and I know I didn't like it, but then I did it again over here and didn't make much change. Well, at that point, now it's like a responsibility conversation. What is your responsibility to yourself to stop experiencing and tolerating the same things that we already know are serving you? Yeah.
I also like to look at what's your thought process because, again, like we know that our behavior means something, right? So when you're triggered by something, what was the thought behind, what you said or when you left or what was that? Because there's a fear behind there. And if we don't understand what the fear is, we're not gonna understand what's happening. So if you're worried about somebody leaving, and this kind of also goes back to your core beliefs. Okay, if he leaves, what is that saying about me? I don't want him to leave. Does this make me feel like I'm the undesirable person or I'm not good enough or maybe it's just I'm not ready for relationships or anything like that. But um, I think that's good to kind of look at seeing what's your thought process. How do you feel about this? And validation. That's something I had thought about too. What is this person validating for you that you felt like wasn't good enough in your own mind? So you needed this person to fill this big hole that they're only going to fill but so much. So if we aren't looking at that, you'll start seeing that you're accepting a bunch of behaviors that you probably would have never accepted on the outside looking in if you're looking at someone else's relationship. Like, oh, I would never do that. People love to say that. Yeah.
Definitely.
There's probably a big hole of validation there that you need to learn how to validate yourself on. Like, validation is fine. It's a natural thing for people to want to be acknowledged for things or whatever. But when you're seeking it all the time from outside sources, that becomes a problem and that creates a pattern.
Definitely.
I was gonna say that's a major pattern. There is always like, am I always looking externally for things to agree with what's here or to guide me, right? Males and females, like that's something that you see in just individuals as a whole, where it's so when we talk about patterns, that's actually something I actually like bring up and say, let's step back. What do you notice? Because if somebody's always, well, I was listening to this, or I talked to my mom about this, or I talked to such and such about this, and I'm always looking for opinions and things of that nature. It's one thing to like, go to somebody, get a consult. Let me just kind of see, you got some experience here. But then it's another to actually like constantly solicit
Mhm.
for stuff because it's like, what are you running away from inside yourself? What are you scared of? And sometimes it is, I'm scared of making a bad decision, or I'm scared, or I don't trust myself. Okay, so that's where we need to go, right? So
Yeah.
it's like, let's talk about that because
Mhm.
sometimes the unhappiness in the relationship is because I listen to Auntie and L, right? Because I
Mhm.
was, I
Literally.
was,
Yeah.
I constantly show up at the holidays and I'm always hearing, or I'm seeing my friends get married. I'm seeing people have babies. I'm seeing people travel. I'm seeing people live life, and
Yeah.
maybe I'm feeling behind. I'm behind the eight ball or something. So it's, but if that's why you're doing what you're doing,
Mhm.
then that might not work out the way you think, right? And
Mhm.
so it's like that's why it's so important, what am I signing up for? And making sure that it's something that, what I'm saying, you have decided truly is right
Mhm.
for you.
Yeah, like actively deciding,
Yeah.
not just going with the flow. Yes. I
Yeah.
think I feel like what both of y'all are touching on and what I hope to support clients with and just individuals in general is like getting curious, right? Like
Yes.
what do things mean that I'm feeling and what is the narrative attached to that? Looking at our emotions and our thoughts, the things that come up within us, looking at it with a curious and like non-judgmental lens. Because
Yeah.
I think what happens is we get triggered and we immediately want to not feel that way. So then we just try to distract or avoid or do something else. And it's like, well, what was that? What did that just mean? What did that just signify? I think all of our, I would say similarly, thoughts and emotions are information holders. I know we've spoken about this in other topics, but I think it's very important as an individual for me to start really caring about what I'm feeling and taking it to past identification. Like we can recognize, okay, I just felt anxious. Why? And what does it mean? And why does it keep happening? And what can I do differently?
Mhm.
I think that's a big thing within relationships because we we all know your significant other, maybe outside of your mom and them, maybe, but it can trigger you the most. Right? Like that because of the reflection, because of how
Mhm.
much it brings out things for you. But there's a lot of valuable insight in those triggers. But when you avoid them or when you just say, oh, well, they just got on my nerves because they're annoying or they're wrong, then you're going to miss out on a lot of information about you because you're too focused on them.
I think that's a good question too, avoiding. So when you talk about avoiding, I just think about possibly the person who is like, here's all these expectations my family has, and that person has, because of observation, has chosen, I'm just not gonna be a part at all. I'm not gonna be around. I'm not gonna nothing. You kind of like shut down, the person who shuts down. And it's that that also I think is something to pay attention to in terms of a pattern. Am I always shutting down? Because then you have to ask the question, what am I avoiding? Why am I avoiding it? And who has the power there? Because if I'm avoiding something, then that means I've probably given power to something else that I'm scared of because of something else. So there's so much to that. Of course, going to therapy will help you kind of navigate that and guide that, but also think about um the enmeshed families, right? The parents who were very much so projecting on kids, the ones that were very controlling. So kids grew up to be adults who don't really know how to think for themselves, right? So they're always kind of like, either I may completely just shut off from making those kind of decisions, but I'm lonely, but I really do want to be in a relationship, but I just don't know because my example may have been people that I don't want to be like them, right? Because you know what I'm saying? Because people make um and I don't think we've talked about this, but like people make promises in their vows, and because they are so loyal, that deeper peace, you following that and you holding that, and sometimes that's the thing that has you held too. That's the thing that got you anchored, because the energy is going towards that vow, and that's not the way to actually do it, right? So it's like really releasing and letting go, that experiencing a level of freedom with like you can make mistakes and be free to, choose, and so on and so forth. So I even think about the individuals with that pattern of like, if what I grew up in was just so overwhelming and, having to manage other people's emotions or, things of that nature, I might not even be equipped fully in my mind. You are equipped, but in my mind, I might not be equipped or feel comfortable to make decisions for myself. So I avoid it.
Yeah, I think that's another big I agree 100%, and I think that's where therapy can really be helpful is helping people, like, trust themselves,
Yeah.
because there's so much of not wanting to make the wrong decision, right? Not wanting to mess up life. I have a client who is really struggling right now because she got married, and she's like, "I don't think I should have done that." And it's a real thing,
Yeah.
and it's very significant because, again, we have these ideas about loyalty and, "Well, now I did this, so what does it mean?" And it diminishes our sense of, like, trust and confidence in ourselves to know ourselves and know what we need and what is best for us. And I think the reason that that's so limited is because there is so much external focus, like within towards our parents, towards partners and other people. It's very easy for us to just really not know ourselves as well as we would like to think that we do. And I think therapy is a safe and kind of guided, structured place to really learn yourself and the aspects of you that make you an individual, but also what kind of partner are you in that? Because I think that's not always the same. Who I am as an individual just within my own person is that same person who's going into the relationship, or is there a whole nother persona that's kind of having to be put on to be in that space?
Mm.
I've had to ask people too, like, outside of your relationship, who are you? And a
Mhm.
lot of times people don't know how to answer that.
Mhm.
I know the first time that I was asked that by my therapist, it was like, "Oh, I'm a mom, I'm a sister, she was like, "Well, those are titles." And I'm like, well, I don't know what else to say,
Yeah.
you know?
Mhm.
And
A
that's
lot of people feel that way, I think.
yeah, yeah, and you start to sometimes in your relationships, in your caregiving relationships with your family, you're not really taught to figure out what even are your values.
Mhm.
I know for me, I used to feel second guessed a lot, so I didn't even trust my own decisions because I felt like I was always being asked, "Are you sure?" Or maybe you should try this one when I came up with my own things. So when I would get into relationships, I would feel like, "Oh, this is it. This is, and I would just go with the flow, like I had said earlier. And it always came to bite me in the butt every
Mhm.
single time. But I didn't even know who I was. And not knowing who you are, you accept a bunch of crap.
Yeah.
And people see that, especially if you go and mess around with a narcissist. I know we did narcissists already a long time ago, but people prey on that too when you don't know who you are. You
Definitely.
become an easy target. And if you get into multiple relationships where you don't know who you are, you're going with the flow, you don't really have an identity, your identity is the relationship.
Mhm.
Now you're really starting to question yourself, like, clearly I'm the problem.
Yes.
And another thing I want to point out too is we don't give ourselves enough grace when we're trying to look inward. So being in therapy and having someone to point that out in a safe place so that you're not like, okay, clearly it's me. I'm the problem. I don't know
Mhm.
what I'm doing. Now you're starting to beat yourself up.
Mhm.
And that becomes the core value, the core beliefs. I mean, yelling at you again, you don't know what you're doing. You don't deserve it. It is you. You are the problem. And it can either push you away or continue to attract people who are catering to those negative beliefs about yourself versus you figuring out who you are and what do you even value and what is your identity.
Yeah.
Well, I think that comes with accountability. That's what I was saying. I think instead of the blame game, right? I think it comes to being able to look at, and I can think of people who might actually not want to get into therapy because of those hard questions that have to be asked. No, you know what? Therapy ain't for me because because you might be asking questions that you don't know how to answer, right? You don't want to,
But that's okay.
you don't
You're
want
not
to
gonna get
sound
in
with it.
trouble with the therapy.
Yeah, you ain't
We're
gonna
not
get in
gonna
trouble.
Yeah.
But I think that's important to highlight too is that, it's not about the blame game. It's not about, you know, I guess to some extent it's kind of like you said, the negative spirals of like, yeah, it's been me. But I think it's about again accountability and going back to say, okay, I have not always seen this, or hey, I made some mistakes, or hey, you know what? I probably listened to such and such. And, I should have just went with my first mind. I should have tried that. Because it is always gonna feel better you making a decision and then you learning from it than listening to somebody else and it not working out.
Yeah.
Cause you like, dang, Um, or if you are gonna ask, I always say this, I've learned this too. If you are gonna ask somebody for something, then if you really trust what they say, if you going to them, then do what they say versus, went to them, asked, and then you ain't even, applied it, so it's like, well, then, which one you want, so I think a part of that is like also understanding like therapy is a journey that allows you the space to ask the tough questions, and not feel alone in that. But then and say the things that you probably don't even want to say that you've done or that has happened, but being able to actually release it because when you speak it, you release it. If I keep it in and then and like I always tell people too, that's a pattern. If I'm always have it up here and I'm overthinking and I can't sleep, my sleep is disrupted, I can't concentrate.
Yeah.
It's kind of like if I have a trash can and it's overfilling and I know where to dump it, it stays there and it starts to overflow. And now it's just going on to the floor. You know what I mean? It's coming out in your behaviors, it's coming out in all types of ways. So it's good to get it out with putting on paper, going to therapy, doing something with that so that then you can be like, oh, I see and then when you see it on paper, you can actually give some structure to it or say, why did I think that did not, I didn't mean that. You know what I mean? And so you're starting to like really process through what these thoughts might be because again, we are influenced by media, what we listen to, what we see, what we're around, our environment. And so it is very important to be able to sift through what's that stuff and then what's me.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I agree. I think along with being a place to face some of the hard questions, therapy can also like put a name to some things. And again, it's not about calling you out,
Right.
though I will a little bit, where it's appropriate. But to me, it's more about giving you the space and the perspective to see something that you maybe couldn't see or wouldn't see.
Yeah.
For example, if you're a person that, okay, you had this partner who loves motorcycles and watching movies, and so that's what you love. And then you get into this relationship and you have all the same hobbies as this person. And then same, that's a sign that maybe there's a little bit lacking in terms of just your relationship with yourself and what you care about. We do a lot of molding into fit other people or fit other people's lifestyle, which, to some degree that happens in relationships is two individuals coming together and kind of merging lives, but it shouldn't be this like morph into a person, right? And I think that's something that maybe a lot of people feel like is natural and okay. And therapy can help shine a light that while there are some healthy levels of it, there are also some unhealthy levels of it. And where's the line? Of your own independence and individuality still being present.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think you're gonna get a lot. I've done this specifically where I will listen to like the advice that's being given out to people and seeing like the trends and stuff like that. And you like look at it, as a licensed professional and saying, how's this helping people? Because a lot of people are telling you what traits to look for in a partner, whether male or female. And it's like, I don't think that's what I don't think that is helpful because really that's coming from what you want as the speaker, right? So the therapy And I think that we're in a day and age where we do have to differentiate. Somebody who you're watching on YouTube or social media, TikTok, whatever, um, you have to be mindful. I would say I'm always gonna recommend this. Be mindful of someone else telling you what to look for, the traits to look for, because what's gonna work for others is not necessarily meaning that's gonna work for you, regardless of how good it sounds. No matter how it might, oh yeah, that's what I want. Sit with that for a minute. You know what I mean? And because sometimes you can be subconsciously influenced because again, movies, things that you've seen, Disney, whatever you have gone, we all grew up looking at stuff. Is this what um is this a fallacy illusion that I've created in my mind that it's gonna be like? Whereas we're humans, it's real life, right? So it's like you your lifestyle that you've created or want to create, right? Looking at your capacity, what actually helps you feel good, what doesn't make you feel good. Um, Everybody is not romantic, right? So I mean that's a simple one, right? So it's like, oh yeah, I wanna for the purpose of I'm a woman and I would say, with men, it's like if I'm a woman and I'm looking to date a man and someone says, "Yeah, you want somebody who's gonna wine and dine you and do all that," but what if I'm me as a woman? Maybe I'm not into the romance though. Maybe I like something different. You know what I mean? So somebody tell me, then I think that I have to morph into liking that, and really I'm not, you know? So I think about those things too of like being mindful that just because someone has a checklist and saying, okay, hey, no, don't give this person attention. Don't give this woman attention
Yeah.
because of A, B, C, and D. I'd be careful because it can attack and make people feel undeserving of relationships or constant people criticizing themselves because they don't look away,
Yeah.
they don't like certain things that might not work for them, and they start questioning and thinking that they have to morph into those things because they see people who a lot of times don't even have that for themselves. Let's just be real. So I also want to say that as a licensed professional and bring that up is because, you know, as a licensed professional, we're not going to tell you, hey, you need to look at these things and this is what you should want. No, we gonna ask you questions so you can find out and hear more of your voice. And I think that is such the difference in what we're doing, which is what you hear us saying too, is we're asking questions. So I think that's where therapy is beneficial too, because you're not really sitting with someone who is trying to tell you how to live your life, but more so guiding you to ask the questions of how you want to live your life, right? And learn a little bit more about you. So I think that's important as well, because you can get into a pattern of allowing everything externally, what we watch in media, especially with technology advancement, of validation, looking for those things to tell me that I'm successful, looking at those things to tell me I'm in a great relationship and I have this right person, male and female, like I say, as an individual, whatever you're looking for, I could be looking for all these things and end up in those things do not make you happy whatsoever, you know?
Definitely.
Comparison is killer of all joy.
Mhm.
If you're sitting and watching social media and it's your favorite couple, I mean, I have a favorite couple too, but that don't mean I want to be like them. We don't know what's happening behind closed doors.
Mhm.
A lot of times, social media, I feel like 99% of the time, it glamorizes a lot of things
Mhm.
and it looks cute and it's nice. So if that's the case, it's like, okay, what is it that I like from this that makes me feel good? Versus, oh, I need to be like that. Why isn't my relationship like this? Because now you're comparing. And when you start doing that, you really need to start looking into why am I comparing? Because that validation piece is getting ready to come up.
Mhm.
And now you're trying to make this thing work, and it's just not.
Yeah.
When you were talking, love languages popped up. I can't remember if we talked about love languages the last time.
I don't think so.
But when I'm working with couples, it's something to explore because, like you said, if let's say the man likes to wine and dine, but the woman doesn't like gifts, there's five, if I'm not mistaken. It's physical touch, quality time, acts of service, affirmations. I'm missing one.
Physical touch?
Hold on. Hold on again. Physical touch, quality time, words of affirmation, acts of service, and gift giving.
Gift
Yes.
giving, yes. So if you got two people on two different ends, well, I gave her this and she didn't appreciate it. Well, she don't like that. She doesn't like it. You can't make her like it just because your thought, your um Lord, I know I'll be losing my words,
Yes.
but just your intentions, because your intentions were to make this person happy and you had all these, grand ideas. That's not how that person receives love. So sometimes it's all the time. You have to explore how it is that you receive love and how do you like to give love. I'm an acts of service type girl. Help me.
Literally. Literally make my day easier, please.
Okay, because life is a lot. So help me. If you want to wash some dishes, you want to do some laundry or something, you want to help wash my car, just do something. That's nice. That makes me feel loved. But if it's always like, oh, well, I bought you this and I bought you that and I bought you that, that's cool. To me, it has to be thought behind it. I'm cool with a gift, but don't feel like you got to get me a gift just to make up for something or to, feel like you got to make me feel good. That's fine. What's the thought behind it? If the only reason was, oh, I just wanted to, whatever, it don't hit the same as, oh, I looked at this and I thought about you and I felt like you would really like this. That hits different for me. So if we don't know what our love languages are,
Yeah.
how are we going to successfully receive love from this other person who you might really love and it might be a healthy relationship? But y'all are not balanced. You're on two different pages.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's I'm thinking about what both of y'all said, and specifically about the kind of media aspect and technology. Like, it's such a snapshot, right? It's so selective, and it's a glamorized snapshot. Like I said, it's very, I'm gonna show the best of the best.
Yeah.
I feel similarly about, some of this other content about relationships where it's just very like, I don't want to use the word surface level necessarily, but like you said, it's oftentimes a list, a box, whatever.
Yeah.
And I think therapy is the space to look at the whole picture.
Yeah.
And I think that is what is so important, because there's so much that doesn't get presented to the outside world. We hide a lot from the outside world, and therapy ideally is a space for you to really look at everything and figure out what it means, right? And not feel like, you know, it's not therapy is not no Instagram post at all. Like, we can really get into the nitty-gritty and have a better understanding of your own self without feeling like, well, only the pretty parts are worth attention, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's another benefit of working with a licensed professional who can help you look at all of the parts and kind of cohesively, now for you as a person, what does this mean, and what do we want to do with it, and how can we make some sustainable change where it's needed?
And see, you ain't got to be broken down to be able to come to therapy. See, you just got to have some questions or be so curious, right? Like, you know what? Be a little curious. Come and see us, right? And just be want to have some conversations to kind of explore, some stuff, right?
Yeah. And we want to see y'all. Do you ladies have any thoughts?
Um, no, I think, relationships are, when you think about our world, everything has a relationship with something. So this is really the foundation of life. Everything is connected, has a relationship. But what we talked on today, I think, is about the meaning that we give it and understanding the root of where it came from, and then the power in which we have to create our own meanings to things and making sure that it's aligned with who we are. Because I think, and this is just me, so this is what I have observed in my practice and in my life, is that now I look and understand that we know who we are. We just let other people tell us who they think we are.
Yeah. Yeah, that place.
And so then we get buried and we have these layers of things that have been toppled on us. Therapy gets to uncover and take the layers off so that you can actually see yourself.
Therapy is about you. And it's not to say that we won't speak about relationships in therapy, because like you said, it's how we see life. Like, everything, and by nature as humans, we want to be connected to other humans, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But therapy is for you. Therapy is where, sure, you can vent about your partner or your mama or your son or whoever getting on your nerves, but it's still a space where that doesn't have to take precedence over why you're feeling that way or what it is that is coming up for you. And I think it's an important experience for people to have.
Yeah. I don't want people well, I feel like a lot of people come into it scared to even see themselves. So keeping in mind that this is a safe space. And if you are noticing that you are avoiding therapy, even though you have all these questions and you're trying to figure all this stuff out, even trying to understand why are you afraid to see yourself? What is that? That's usually something. Even if it's like, oh, I don't want to tell out my business. I don't want to tell out my business to this stranger. Therapy is a safe place for you to go and talk to someone, a third party who is not a part of your family, they're not a part of your friend group. They kind of see things from the outside looking in. They can just help you connect the dots.
Yeah.
So,
And also not a stranger too. I wanted to say that too. Like part of our job as the professional is to build a therapeutic relationship. Like it's not gonna give stranger. You know what I'm saying? If you get a therapist and they give stranger, let's find another one. But yeah, shouldn't. There's a relationship involved there too. And yeah, that's why we're here. That's why we're in the field. That's what we care about.
And the benefit of one is the fact, because you brought up friends and things of that nature, and I wanted to speak to that too, is a therapist has knowledge, they study this. So if I go to a friend, that friend may give me their experience.
yeah.
Whereas when you go to a therapist, they're actually giving you like what they've studied and being able to channel it into a question, like, and give you tools and skills. So if you're stressed, right? So, and there's layers to it, right? If you come in, you have a lot of questions, but you're seeing symptoms of constantly stress, disrupted sleep, um, loss of concentration, maybe constantly thinking, rumination, stuff like that, then those are things that we can deal with and give tools to cope positively, right? And get you on track. And then through that process, you learn more about how that may have started to manifest, because things are always manifesting in your life physically, a lot of times because of something internally that's saying, hey, information, hey, something's going on. And so that's our opportunity to look at that and say, okay, what am I holding? What's inside of me? What do I need to release? Let me start asking some questions. Let me start looking at some stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, just the openness and willingness to understand that the licensed professional is going to give you very much so difference. But I do want to speak to the fact that we're human too, and we got lived experience. So we, as the therapeutic relationship, evolves as well. I think that, that relationship helps to also understand, that we all have our own um experiences, and that's sometimes how we got to the position that we're in, right? Because we want to help other people as well.
Absolutely. Lord knows when I'm talking to my clients, I'm like, girl, yeah, hold on now. Either that or if I even share some of my experiences just to remind you, like, I am a human. I'm not like sitting up on this throne. I'm not all high and mighty just because I'm a therapist. Like, I have real life experiences. And some of them are more recent than people might think. Yeah. But that's a part of growth. Growth it's not an arrival. You are continuously growing. And sometimes in different stages of your life, there might be something else you need to see that you don't see within yourself, and a therapist can point that out to you.
Yep.
So definitely, yeah, it's not a place of judgment. And if you're judging yourself, we need to talk about that too.
For sure. All right. Definitely. Awesome. I appreciate both of y'all's perspectives and insight as always.
Yours too.
Sure. If you are anybody that is interested or even just curious, right, about starting therapy, we definitely want to hear from you. We can be reached easily from our website, excuse me, and it is, I just always like to clarify, Soul Solutions, SOLE Solutions CCS.com. We're also on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. So check us out.
Check us out. All right, y'all.
See
So wrap. See you next time.
Yes. Yeah.
Happy.